Well, let's talk about Muddy Waters a little bit and the famous or infamous
The electric mud?
Yeah, depending on who you talk to. If you talked to or did talk to Muddy, it was infamous.
The nucleus for that whole project was another jazz player, Charles Stepney.
Now this was something that Marshall had to sell to Muddy, right? Because
Mud was scared to death. I mean, you're talking about guys nowadays that have all their little homies with them. Yeah. Well, Mud and them had their little gangs, like 4 or 5 guys supporting cast. They would bring them into the studio and line them all up in a row. And they would supply them with whatever they needed to sustain them. They all would come in with their hats on and these long trench coats. And they would sit. And Mud would draw off of their strength of support of this new idea. Everything was set up for Mud, as far as the tune was picked, and we worked it out before he came in. So he was kind of positioned to know when to come in and when to leave and where to take a solo.
Because Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf were both from the South, from Mississippi, who had migrated to Chicago, and they were blues.
Staunch blues
musicians.
No electric anything.
Right. I mean, they sort of became electric when they came up here, but they started out as rural folk blues players. Yeah.
Acoustic.
And they came up here, and all their recordings up to that point had been traditional blues recordings. And so this was a sort of a really had to be sold to them by Marshall Chess, who wanted to sort of bring them back to a wider audience, and he had that sub-label of Chess called Cadet that he formed to sort of put these things out, and so it was his idea to kind of in a way repackage them.
Yeah, they had no idea marketing-wise where this was going. But it got to a point when we started recording, they did actually start laughing. Because they laughed because they said, oh, gee, I sound like some of them rock and roll players, them guys that make all the noise, They loved it. And Wolf, his famous phrase was, yeah, we playing all this queer music, which he meant queer. Because it had all these twanging guitars, because you had Roland Faulkner, jazz player. Mud had his sidekick guitar player, I forgot his name, but everybody was still jazz with it. Especially Roland Faulkner, he was bad. But all these jazz minds stretching out doing this new music because, our minds, we reach out, because jazz is improvisation. So it was, for us, it was big fun.
And the Howlin' Wolf album was the same idea, wasn't it?
Same idea, yeah.
Marshall Chess deciding, okay, let's do that with.
Yeah, why not? They were the 2 top artists.
Yeah, and the songs were blues songs.
Yeah, now Sidney Barnes I think he wrote several of the hit ones. Harper's Free Press or something like that. The rhythms, we worked those rhythms out ourselves with Charles Stepney. Because, everything on that album is constantly rolling. It's just a forward motion, I should say. And it was we were kind of putting on, funning what the hard rock cats was doing. But it was funny, the hard rock guys took us serious. Well, they had to take us serious because they couldn't play jazz and we could. And they admired that. It was like they were flattered. But it got flattered to the point of they're kind of serious. Because we kept on doing it. So we enjoyed ourselves.
So you're a group of jazz musicians playing rock music with a blues artist.
Exactly. And becoming that chef, becoming that artist,
Now, when those albums were done with both Muddy and Howlin' Wolf, they weren't happy with the outcome at first, were they?
Well, we're probably scared of peer pressure. Whether it would have been Lil Milton or Albert King or whoever, Albert Collins, why y'all guys playing all that, that old rock and roll stuff, Hey, but it was time for a change. It's like when gospel finally made a crossover from gospel to pop. The beats are the same now, you know. But after it was done, they loved it because booking wise, here they come, Germany, Europe, France, Japan, with this new sound. Plus, they still play those stuff, and a whole new audience.